Bienvenidos a todos. Good afternoon. This is Abelardo de la Peña Jr., Director of Marketing and Communications with La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, welcoming you to our latest installment of En Casa con La Plaza Cocina. Every Monday at 3 o'clock, we present to you demonstrations by some of the world's most famous, awe-inspiring cocineros, restaurant owners, cookbook authors, and more. Food historians, we got them all, but all directed towards our favorite food, Mexican cuisine. So if you're on Facebook, please share your screen, start a watch party. This is going to be a fun one. Those of you on Zoom, your comments are welcome. We have the Q&A. You could go ahead and ask your questions. We'll be asking questions, making comments. Let us know where you're viewing from. That's always interesting to know where you're coming in from. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our Director of Program and Culinary Arts, Jimena Martin, who will be your host for today's En Casa con la Plaza Cocina. Come on in, Jimena.
Gracias, Alvarado. Hello, hi, everybody. Monday, we have a very special guest. We go back a little bit ways back. We had a exhibition opening, and I was listening to Tamarindo podcast a while back, and I heard this gentleman, Esteban Castillo, speak about food and his passion. And we were looking for caterers for our groundbreaking Mírame, our first brown queer exhibition. And just listen to his philosophy, and he just sounded so delightful. I reached out, and he was able to come and cater our reception. And look how time flies. That was 5 years ago. So I'm so happy to bring back Esteban back here to La Plaza with all beautiful things, this beautiful cookbook. The holidays are coming. I have mine. I hope you guys have yours. But without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Esteban Castillo. Esteban is a queer Chicano Mexican American who lives in Central California with his husband, Billy. And they have their 3 dogs, Nomi, Rigby, and Jespin. He is a communication specialist and graphic designer by the day, home cook, and reality TV connoisseur by night. He is also the author of the award-winning blog and cookbook, Chicano Eats, where he explores his bicultural identity as a Chicano through stories and food. And today he's going to be making toasted coconut horchata, perfect for a nice hot LA day. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, Jimena. How are you?
Good, good.
It's been so long since I've seen you. I mean, like Jimena was saying, we met 5 years ago, and that was the last time that I saw you. And I still remember that day where I made these really good tepache mezcalitos for you guys that I have not been able to recreate, which I am so bummed about because I made that recipe for you guys and then I lost it. I didn't think to save it down on the computer, and so I beat myself every other day that I didn't get to save that recipe.
They were absolutely delicious. So you need to do some homework and bring those back for us.
Luckily, I just published a cookbook over the summer called Chicano Eats, Recipes from My Mexican American Kitchen. And in there, I have a whole chapter dedicated to aguas frescas and cocktails. And so one of the things that we're going to be making today is one of the recipes.
Tell us.
For my toasted coconut horchata. I couldn't just include an original horchata. I had to have a little bit of fun with it. So I included 3 different recipes for 3 different horchatas. We have the original, we have the toasted coconut, which is what we're going to be making today. And then I also have a matcha horchata. So to get started.
Well, I'm so excited that you're here. I just have to ask, what was your journey for this cookbook? I mean, from a podcast, Instagram, what was this process to get this beautiful book out to us?
Honestly, it was a very stressful process. I started this book about 3 years ago. I was 2 years into my blogging journey. I started my blog, Chicano Eats, in 2016, a few months before the election, the 2016 election. And a few months after that, I actually had an editor from a really big publisher reach out to me asking if I was interested in writing a cookbook. And that's not something that I had considered then because I had just launched my blog. And so I was still trying to find my voice. I was still trying to figure out what my visuals look like. And so it's something that I started to sort of chip at slowly. But it wasn't until 2 years after that that I really started working on a book proposal. And a few months after writing the book proposal, I sped off to New York and I ended up getting a publishing deal with HarperCollins.
That is absolutely amazing. But a little bit more about your background. Did you go to school? Did your home, mom, grandma on your own? How did you discover your passion for cooking?
I would say that I discovered my passion for cooking when I was in college. I grew up in Orange County in a city called Santana. And, you know, college was my first time leaving home. I went to school up in Northern California. I did my undergraduate studies in Humboldt State, where I went to school for public relations and graphic design. And so for me, leaving home for the first time, you know, I was sort of trying to figure out how I could replicate these recipes that I missed so much. Because for me, traveling back home was a 12 to 13-hour car ride. And that was just kind of impossible. And so I would give my mom calls every now and then and say, Mom, how can I make your birria? How can I make your frijoles puercos? And she would just say, échale un poquito de esto, un poquito del otro. And for me, it was like being handed a puzzle with so many different missing pieces. And so it wasn't until I started getting into the kitchen myself that I realized, hey, this is kind of like second nature to me. You know, growing up, my parents were both undocumented until I was 21 when I was able to be one of their sponsors. And so growing up, I got to go to Mexico on my own a lot of the time. And mis abuelitos on my mom's side have always cooked for a living. Every year during the spring, mi abuelito would go off to Cuyutlan, and he was a sea salt miner. So he would mine sea salt. And when he wasn't doing that for the rest of the year, he actually had a little taco cart that he would set in el jardín, where he would make tacos de adobada every single night. And so I grew up alongside them. And I feel like just from watching mi abuelito and then mi abuelita making tacos dorados and sopes in her backyard every single weekend, I feel like I was just kind of like a sponge that really just absorbed everything.
That's really beautiful. It's such a nice way. That's wonderful. You got to spend time with your grandparents and witness
Yeah,
them create these beautiful food memories. And it sounds like your collection of food memories are all captured here in your book.
yeah. I mean, honestly, it was just the way that they viewed food has really just transformed my view because for them, it wasn't just about feeding people, it was about nourishing others' souls through what they knew how to do best, which was cook. You know, mi abuelito, aside from being a sea salt miner and having his little taco cart, he was everybody's go-to for birria, you know, and which is one of the recipes that's in the book. Like I was telling you when we were setting up, it was one of the recipes that gave me the hardest time because I really wanted it to be perfect. And I almost didn't include my recipe for birria in the book because I just couldn't quite nail it down. And it wasn't until a few months after I had turned in my manuscript that I was like, you know what, I have a couple of weeks to do some reshoots here and there. Let me give my mom a call. And so I did, and she gave me a bit of a pep talk, and she was like, you know what, if you do this, maybe this, your birria might be perfect. And so sure enough, the next day I tried it one more time, and I walked into the kitchen, and it just smelled like my mom's house. And without having to taste the birria, I knew that it was going to be perfect, and it was.
It was. I tried it out 2 weeks ago. My daughter and I just ate it up and we had it as is. And then the next day we made tacos. It's a really delicious.
Yeah, it's
Um,
been such a gift to be able to see everybody enjoying these recipes because they really just have taken so much patience and love to really develop. Uh,
it is a passion of love. I know you just got this one out. Do you see there might be another one later?
let's keep our fingers crossed. You know, if this one does well enough and there's that demand and everybody is just talking about it, then there might be. I certainly hope so.
Okay. Well, tell me about your horchata. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's get back to the horchata. So here, our base for the horchata is essentially going to be toasted coconut flakes, toasted almonds, and then rice. So what I'm going to start doing is I have large coconut flakes here and some sliced almonds that I'm going to add to my skillet, and we're just going to toast these very lightly for about 3 to 4 minutes on medium-low heat. Let me grab my spatula here. One of the things that I realized when I was developing my recipes for the horchata is that if you over toast your almonds, when you go to blend everything and you take that first sip, all you're gonna taste is toasted almond. And so what I really wanna do by toasting these two is just to add a little bit of extra layer of flavor to the horchata, but not it be super overwhelming to where you only taste the almonds. So we're just going to toast this until it starts to get a little bit of color, and then we'll go ahead and move on. So I'm just gonna let this hang out for about 3 to 4 minutes, just casually stirring every now and then it should be good to add to our rice.
Okay, we've got some folks saying hello. We got Rudy Vivas from Valley Village, California, and also from Northeast Los Angeles, Heather Sabine.
Hola, how is everybody doing?
Great. So how long did it take for you to develop each recipe? Like, what was a test drive to get them perfect? Did you have family and friends come taste them before they were actually edited down to the cookbook?
Yes, and it was a really long process. Everybody has a different timeline with their books. This is something that they negotiate with their publisher. And I think I had just a little bit under 2 years. I started the book in August of 2018, and I finished the book by the end of April of this year. So it was just a little shy under 2 years. And I essentially had about maybe 4 to 6 weeks to test the recipes, develop them, and shoot and write the head notes and everything. So I think I had about 6 weeks to really nail everything down.
Now, did you test drive all the recipes at home, or did you go into industrial space?
Yeah, I did. And at the time, I was living in the Inland Empire in Corona in a really small 2-bedroom apartment with a tiny kitchen. And trying to get all of this done was such a task. It was really hard. Fortunately, my parents had just moved down a few blocks from where I lived. And so I would take a trip every now and then to sort of share what I was working on with my parents and get that second opinion.
While you're stirring away, we have another person saying hello. Adrienne Sanchez from Austin, Texas. Ignacio Gomez, Victor Franco, Melissa Gonzalo, Elena Herrera. So a lot of folks, a lot of fans watching you do your thing today.
Is anybody who's watching already have a copy of the book? I'd love to know, if you guys have a copy of the book, what are some of the recipes that you've been gravitating towards? This is one of the things that I've been finding to be really interesting, to see what everybody is really gravitating towards. When the book came out initially, everybody was making the dulce de leche choco flan in there. And so it was kind of neat to almost like reintroduce that concept of the choco flan to people who have never had it before, or who maybe had it when they were kids and then thought it was too difficult to make. It's been such a blessing to sort of bring a little bit of my culture to everybody.
We got Rudy Vivas. It says, not yet. I'm looking forward to purchasing it. I just heard about the book, so I am excited. So
thank you.
Like I say, the holidays are coming. So what best time?
Yeah, so it's sort of starting to get a little bit of color. I think this can go for maybe another minute and a half. And then we'll keep going with the recipe. What's
your favorite recipe of the book?
Honestly, if I were to give you a pageant answer, it would have to be all of them, because I honestly truly spent so much time on every single one, making sure that everything was perfect. And that was one of the harder things of writing a book, sort of getting out of that mentality that everything has to sort of over exceed your expectations, or, you know, getting out of your head is one of those things that was really difficult. But if I would have to really nail it down to one recipe, it would have to be that birria recipe. It's just so perfect. And I also include instructions in there for pressure cooker instructions, because, you know, there's days where I'm craving birria, but I don't want to wait overnight for the beef to marinate. And so throwing it into the pressure cooker, I can have a really good birria within an hour, you know?
You know what I did? I put it in the crock pot.
Yeah, that's another thing, you know, it's about finding those shortcuts where you're not going to be losing a lot of flavor, or where the recipe isn't going to be losing any integrity. Okay, so my coconut flakes and my almonds are starting to look pretty toasty, so I'm going to remove these. I'm going to turn this guy off, and then I'm just going to pour it into a bowl with some rice. And then to this, I'm gonna add a couple of cups of hot water. And you want the water to be hot, because what we're doing on the skillet is essentially blooming everything. And then I'm gonna throw in a stick of cinnamon. And what I mean by blooming is really intensifying all of those flavors. And by adding that hot water, it's just going to extract even more flavor, especially with the cinnamon stick, because that's essentially what you do when you're making tea, is you're extracting all of that flavor out. And so we want to use hot water that's going to be hot to the touch, but not boiling, because we don't want to cook the rice. And so we're going to set this aside. We're going to cover it with plastic wrap, and this is going to chill out for 4 to 6 hours, 4 hours at the minimum, because we want when you go to touch the rice, if you're able to break it easily, then you'll know that the rice is ready to be pulsed. Otherwise, you're gonna have a tougher time blending everything into a homogeneous mixture. So I'm gonna let this guy hang out, and I've already made a batch. And before we move on, I'm just gonna toast some more coconut flake to use as a garnish. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, there's a lot of commentary. So I was trying to see if this recipe was in your book. We have Laura Pebbles Trash asking, can you teach me how to make chicharron con salsa tacos?
Yes, I actually, if you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram, go to my story highlights. I actually have a walkthrough on there where I make chicharron con salsa verde. And if you, for some reason, can't find it on there, go to my website, chicanoeats.com. I have another recipe on there for chicharron and salsa verde. It's super easy, super delicious. But yeah, go on there, and I have all sorts of story tutorials on there, like my marranitos. I have a really classic caramel flan. What else do I have on there? I have the horchata that we're making today on there. I also have a couple of cocktails from the book on there. I have all sorts of stuff.
Okay. Abelardo just shared it on the folks who are watching it on Facebook, his Instagram account. So you can go directly click on there to find more information on Esteban. She's also asking, Laura's asking, where can we buy your book?
You can purchase it essentially wherever books are sold. You can purchase it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to IndieBound to see if there's any local bookstores in your area that are carrying it. You can go to Bookshop as well. And I typically have signed copies on sale on my website, but I'm currently out. Should be getting some more this week. So if you want to hang tight, just check back in with me later this week. Okay, so these guys are starting to get some color. I'm probably gonna leave them on here for maybe another 30 seconds. Oh, Jimena, you were asking me about the proposal process earlier. That was a really difficult process, especially as a queer Chicano, you know, trying to sell a book was really difficult because you kind of have a lot of cards stacked against you. Uh, and so for me, you know, writing this book proposal was really just like, you know, writing a resume, you know. The publishers want to know if you're marketable. They want to know what you've done in the past with, like, let's say, worked with other brands, or, you know, they want to know your background. And so it's kind of tough being able to what's the word? You know, putting that idea that you have for your book into a couple of pages, it was really hard.
But you have such beautiful work. And
It,
so just the product alone would sell for itself. You know, I'm so happy that they acknowledge all your hard work and provided this wonderful opportunity. And hopefully that would open up doors for other Latino food folks to have an opportunity like yours.
yeah, and I really enjoyed the proposal writing process because it really allowed me to sort of narrow down what I had envisioned, and I enjoyed that proposal just as much as I enjoy the finished book, because I poured so much emotion in there. I showed a lot of my work in there, and it paid off, because when I did go, the process was super quick too. You know, I handed it off to my agent, and he went off to the different publishers, and within a week we had the book go into auction because so many different publishers were interested in acquiring the book. And then when it came time, you know, it literally was within a week. So I flew out to New York, and we had several meetings with different publishers. And this is sort of where you get to see who you mesh with a little bit better. And so I essentially met with a lot of teams that were predominantly white, where I didn't necessarily felt like they were going to be able to help me tell that story, because they hadn't had those experiences before. And luckily, when I met with HarperCollins, I met with Cristina Garces, who is essentially one of the only Latinas in the publishing game. And so getting to meet with her and her tell me right off the bat, I within a few minutes of receiving your proposal, I was like, I want this. And she explained to me, I lived in Mexico before, I've studied there. And so her, as a Puerto Rican woman who's lived in Mexico before, who's had these similar experiences, I felt were really crucial to me producing a really good book. You know, because she was going to understand me speaking Spanish throughout the book, and just all the little different nuances here and there. And it paid off. Just a few, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Forbes named this one of the best cookbooks of 2020, which was crazy. So crazy.
Congratulations. Oh my God, that's awesome. Awesome. But also, besides the proposal, I know with a lot of bigger firms, design is one thing as well, where they may not, they have stereotypical ideas of what Latino food and culture can be. And you do beautiful, your Instagrams are gorgeous. And also the other thing about Instagram, you're very generous with your recipe offerings. You are, you are. So how was the design process behind the book as well? Did you have a lot of input in that? Did they find designers that were more thoughtful with your vision?
You know what, that was one of the other things that I sort of struggled with meeting with a lot of these other publishers, is that as a first-time author, you're going to be expected to have someone else shoot your photography. And for me, that's kind of a non-negotiable, because a huge part of my work is my photography. It's what someone looks at and immediately says, "Oh, that's a Chicano Eats photo," you know. And so I met with a lot of teams that wanted someone else to shoot my work, and for me, I was like, I can't let someone else shoot that, because it's part of my work, you know.
It's your look.
Yeah,
it's totally your brand.
And luckily, HarperCollins was just kind of like, we trust you, and we want you to do whatever it is that you want. Which is, again, crazy to me that they were giving me such creative freedom. And so as a graphic designer as well, I kind of had to work with their graphic designers, and it was just such a breeze working with them.
Oh, that's good. That's really good that they gave you the freedom. And you have a very unique style to how you food design your stuff on Instagram. But just real quick, Rosibel Guzman says congrats.
Thank you.
Before we step into the recipe, as I look at the ingredients, we're so fortunate. A lot of folks are eating more healthy, looking for more vegan options. And so Jas Lowe says, I'm looking for veganizing my Mexican recipes. Any suggestions would be great. Greatly appreciated. And for the horchata, if it has dairy, but I realize it has almond milk. So we're good on the vegan life, right?
Well, yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I have instructions in the head notes and in like the little note sections on the bottom of the recipes that tell you that you can make any of these horchatas non-dairy and vegan. This one that we're making today, before I forget, so what we're doing with the almonds and the rice is we're essentially creating an almond and a rice milk mixture. Because I want as much coconut flavor in this as possible, this toasted coconut horchata is actually vegan and it's non-dairy, so it's gonna be vegan because we're using coconut milk. And then to sweeten this, we're actually gonna be using coconut condensed milk, which is a really great substitute. And this is something that I suggest for the other two to sweeten, because that's where my horchatas get a lot of that creaminess, is from the almonds and then from the condensed milk or the coconut condensed milk. And so
Is it easy to get the coconut condensed milk?
it
I
is.
don't think I don't think that maybe I haven't looked for it. I've never seen it. Maybe I haven't looked for it yet.
Typically in like the international section or like the Asian, you know how they have like the international food section. You can find this at Walmart here in California. You can also find it at Target, Whole Foods, and Sprouts farmers markets, and essentially at any of those like natural food stores that you might have in your neighborhood.
Thank you.
And so here in my blender, I have that mixture that was steeping earlier. Because in the recipe that I have in the book, I say to use light fat coconut milk. I wasn't able to find any today, so I'm working with full fat. So I'm gonna throw this into the blender as well. One of the things that I hate about the full fat coconut milk is that we're gonna be pouring this over ice. And so what that means is that if we use full fat coconut milk, then once we pour this over ice, the little fat bits are going to solidify. So we're going to have a really chunky horchata, and that's not what we want. And so I'm just going to give it a blend here. And we're going to blend it for about maybe 30 to 40 seconds until it's completely smooth. And for the rest of the recipes throughout the book, let me see if I can still talk through this blender. And so to veganize some of those recipes, I would say that out of the 85 recipes that I have in the book, about 50 of them are vegetarian friendly. And you can easily veganize them by just using your favorite crema mexicana substitute, your favorite cheese substitutes. It's really just those really minor tweaks that would make it completely vegan. I do have some fully vegetarian recipes in there, like my vegetarian pambazos, which are a torta where the bread is dipped in a guajillo sauce and lightly fried. And then the mixture inside is chorizo with potatoes. And the only thing that sort of keeps it from being vegan is just adding a drizzle of crema and cheese. So it's just those really simple swaps that would just make everything completely vegan.
Just more compliments out there. Stephen Chavez from Latino Foodie Blog. We love Chicano Eats. Congratulations on the book. Miles Reyes is asking, are the recipes from your book inspired by a certain region in Mexico, or do they take inspiration from various regions?
They are very inspired by me growing up in Colima. My parents are both from the state of Colima, which is bordered by Jalisco and Michoacan. So we're on like the central Pacific West Coast. We eat a lot of seafood. Our enchiladas are different. They're sweet enchiladas. Our sopes are different. They're a little bit more flat than the rest of Mexico and a little bit smaller. So yeah, it's a little bit more inspired by that region of Mexico. And so here I have everything already blended up. I'm gonna pour this into my pitcher here, and I'm using a fine mesh coffee strainer, which is one of my absolute favorite things to use for something like this, because it is, again, really fine mesh. And so it's going to ensure that our horchata is just really smooth and really creamy. And you can find this online. I think I bought this one at IKEA. And so this process is just going to be a little bit slow, but it's so worth it. Does anybody else have any other questions so far?
So far, no, just people enjoying your process. Any more behind the scenes stories on your bookmaking?
There was a lot of eating. Let me tell you, these cachetes were not here before I started writing the book. There was just so much eating, so much enjoying of all of the different sweets and treats that I have throughout. Let me tell you, I think I gained maybe 30 pounds. Uh, so there was definitely a lot of like enjoying food. Yeah, I don't know. It was a very long process. Trying to see if I have a little fork, something that's going to be easier to work with.
How was COVID being, like the early COVID days? I'll be doing a talk on comfort food during COVID times with Latino perspective. So we just sent out a survey to a couple of the team members, like what was their comfort food during the pandemic? What was yours?
It was kind of tough because I had plans to really go out and enjoy the book and celebrate the book with my readers. And so when everything started to lock down and shut off, I was kind of depressed about it because I wasn't gonna, I understood what was going on, but it was kind of tough to spend the past 3 years working on a project and then not be able to do anything. But like, I'm a Mexican, not a Mexicant. And so I took those lemons and I made lemonade and I started my online classes. And that's been such a great way for me to cook out of the book with my readers in the comfort of their own home, it's been such a really cool, intimate way to celebrate the book with them.
Yeah, with the whole, La Plaza, usually I'm behind the scenes. I'm never up front. I provide a platform for our community with music, poetry, films, and we had a beautiful lineup. But then again, we had to pivot and change. And so now we have our En Casa series, like En Cocina and En Familia. So it's just another way to continuing what we do, our passion, in regards to public programs for our community.
Yeah. I mean, we all find a way, and I think this has been a blessing in disguise in a way where, you learn something from it. Yeah, if anybody else is interested, last night I actually hosted a chile relleno class, and that was really delicious. But if anybody else is interested in joining me for any future classes, I'm teaching a salsa class this weekend. And then in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing a class on vegetarian tamales, as well as just regular red chicken tamales. And you can just find that under my upcoming events tab in my website. And see, if you can see here, it's giving me a little bit of trouble because I'm working with that full fat coconut milk. So if you happen to make this at home, stick with the light. There's just going to be less of a chance of it being really thick, and having those little like globules floating around.
But it's gonna be so delicious. The full fat's always more delicious though too, though.
I mean, I wish in this case it doesn't carry a lot of flavor. It'll just be a little bit more of a nuisance, which is why we're using the coconut condensed milk.
We have a question from Joanne Valencia. She's asking, she's definitely buying this book, your book. Can you tell me if when making homemade flour tortillas, is lard still being used?
Yes, and I hope you are. That is the only way. That was one of the things that I did too for my frijoles de la olla. Is it just doesn't taste the same without lard.
Yeah, and that's another thing while doing pandemic time is like, here's the opportunity to make all these homegrown things from scratch.
Yeah, and that lard is really gonna carry a lot of flavor. I was testing different recipes for flour tortillas earlier this year, where I was using shortening versus clarified lard, and then lard that was just like freshly taken from like chicharrones and bacon, and it really does carry a lot of that flavor.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at your recipe. Tortillas 2021. Because I was looking at other recipes, they put in like baking soda or baking flour. So I'm looking up yours.
Oh, I don't have a recipe in the book.
Oh, you don't?
It's something I was developing for my blog.
Okay. Rosibel Guzman is asking, can you do anything with the leftover horchata grounds?
I would compost them. There's not much flavor that you're going to be able to. I mean, you can try making a smaller batch, but you're not going to really get very much else from this.
Okay, there's another Adrienne Sanchez. Any new recipes that you're excited in developing?
That's a good question. I haven't had time to develop anything else lately. I've been doing a lot of promotion for the book. And so I've been doing a lot of online classes, a lot of demonstrations, and developing new recipes has just been kind of on the back burner for me. But once I do get back into developing recipes, what do I want to develop? I love baking, so I want to develop some more cake recipes, just some more sweets, because I do have a big sweet tooth. And last night I was actually thinking of a concept for a chocolate flan with like maybe like a raspberry coulis, which is essentially like a raspberry puree. Just because I really like that notion of like a dark chocolate with that bright raspberry. So maybe that'll be the first thing that I start to test once I have some free time.
And the tepache cocktail that you made for us 5 years ago.
Yes. I'm still so bummed. I wanted to include that in the book. And then when I tried to go back to see if I had the recipe, I just could not find it. I was so bummed.
There's a really great question from, well, we'll find it next year for next year. Then you come back and make it for us. Miles Reyes is asking, have you noticed any, oops, my monitor, have you noticed any changes in the Chicano food space? Are the chefs in the space sticking more to traditional recipes or more innovation and creative takes on classic recipes?
That's a really good question.
It is.
I think everybody is moving towards innovation and being creative. And this is something that I kind of struggled with too when I started my blog is, am I only going to be featuring like traditional recipes, or am I going to have fun with this? And I thought back to that identity struggle that I had as a kid growing up in between two countries is, where do I fit in? You know, where do I fit in? And does the food that I make always have to be quote unquote traditional and authentic? And for me, the answer was no, because when you look at the word authentic, it's essentially shaped by your own personal experiences. So my definition of authentic is going to be completely different than yours. And so I feel like it's something that we need to move away from, because it also gatekeeps a lot of these different communities, you know? We didn't I grew up with the culture, but there's a lot of kids out there who maybe were assimilated to American culture, so they don't speak Spanish. They didn't grow up with any of the culture, and so I think it's really cool that everybody is moving away from just strictly making traditional making Mexican food and really just putting their own spin on it.
Pastor Herrera is asking, since your family's from Colima, do you ever make horchata with mango or papaya?
I haven't, but I have had it with melon. But that would be really, yeah, that would be really good.
The mango for sure, for sure. And there's another great question. Adrian Sanchez asks, any chefs or people that you have looked up to?
Yes, you know, there's people like Patty Jean, who has just been able to really build such a wonderful platform. There's also Claudia Sandoval from MasterChef. There's I don't know, there's just too many people to name, which is a really great problem to have, because for the longest time we didn't really have that representation aside from a couple of people here and there, like Marcela and I just forgot his name, and Aron, who were like the only main Latinos in the industry. So it's really nice that we are able to have all of this representation in the industry.
And more cookbooks.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Meli Martinez. She's going to be coming, I think in February, I believe. And she just came out with a cookbook for September for Fiestas Patrias. And she's another great blogger out there that has very generous with her recipes step by step. I've learned a lot looking at her blogs too. So little by little, the doors are opening up.
Cookbooks that came out this year, which is really wonderful, you know. Okay, I'm almost done. Stay away from that full fat. But we're almost done, you guys.
Can we make that horchata into an adult cocktail?
Yes, you can. That was one of the other things that I had to include, because everybody was hounding me for cocktails when I was working on the cookbook. They were like, Esteban, are you going to have drinks in there? Esteban, what cocktails are you going to have in there? And so a lot of these make really great big batch cocktails by adding specifically for the horchata, rum. If you add some rum to this, oh my gosh, it is super delicious. I also have Jamaica spritzer in there, which is really delicious. I have my strawberry Jamaica agua fresca in there, which is really good with some vodka. Oof. Listen, I live in Fresno and it's perpetually summer, just about 9 out of the 12 months of the year. And so these are always perfect because it's always hot. It's super hot today. So I'm going to be enjoying this after.
So if by chance there's some leftovers, if there are any leftovers, how long would it last in the refrigerator?
For something like this, I would give it, I wouldn't say that you would have any leftovers, but I would give it maybe 2 to 3 days. You just always want to make sure that whatever it is that you're storing is always stored in an airtight container, because that's going to keep everything away. It's going to, you know, keep everything as fresh as you can. Like one of the recipes that I have in there for mole, I have a recipe in the book for like my own version of mole coloradito, which doesn't take all week to make. You know, it's something you can have that day, and it stores really well. You can keep it in there. I tested this, and the batch that I made lasted for about 6 months. So
oh, wow.
It worked really well.
In the oh wow.
Yeah, in the freezer.
That's really good to know. We have a question from Pastor Herrera Jr. Any plans to publish the book in Spanish?
I mean, that's a goal. I have a lot of people who ask me about this, but it ultimately depends on publishers. You know, if publishers from other countries are interested in purchasing the rights to translate the book, then you know I'd be ecstatic. Okay, so I have my horchata here, and I have a glass. I'm gonna add some ice. But yeah, I hope it gets to that one day. I'd love for it to be printed in Spanish. I'd love to hand my grandparents a copy and say thank you for being such huge inspirations and for them to be able to read it. But it's just kind of a waiting game.
Mm. I was just looking at your book here, Cajeta Cream Cheese Brownie Tart. That looks so decadent. Let's see this one. This would be great for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that is almost like a little work of art because the marbling of the cajeta and the chocolate is just, you've got that contrasting dark brown with the orange, and it's really wonderful. And so all that's really left is just to add a splash of vanilla. You pour this over ice, and then you add some of those toasted coconut flakes from earlier, and you're good to go. It's super simple. All it really takes is just a little bit of time for the rice to soak, and you're done. And if you want to get a little crazy, then add a little shot of rum.
Okay, let's see this right here. Hang on, my partner in crime is coming up real quick. Before Barolo takes over, it's been so nice to see Esteban from 5 years ago, from Tamarindo, your blog, Instagram, your cookbook, and now you're here with La Plaza sharing all your delicious recipes. Un abrazo grande, congratulations. I look forward to more successes. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you for everybody else that tuned in. If you happen to get a copy of the book, you know, I hope you enjoy it. And if you happen to make anything from the book, tag me. I'd love to see your guys' creations and recreations. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Esteban. Thank you, Jimena, for asking those great questions. All of you out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Great questions, great comments. We love this interaction with not only with our special guests like Esteban. I know Jimena always comes with the best questions because she is a fervent, has that fervent curiosity on this food, and then she's applying it, and she's making a lot of these recipes herself. So when we open up La Plaza Cocina sometime in 2021, we will be ready for you. So with that, yes. We'd like to thank you again, thank our sponsors, SoCal Gas and California Humanities. Coming up the rest of the week here on En Casa con La Plaza, a little bit of a serious turn this Wednesday, the Undocumented Migration Project, which is led by UCLA professor of anthropology and Chicano Central American Studies, Jason De Leon. He'll be talking about their project called Hostile Terrain 94, a global participatory exhibition on migrant death in the Arizona desert. It's going to be, we were planning on having it at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes this fall, but unfortunately because of the pandemic, we're going to have to reschedule into 2021, but they're going to talk about the project and its impact worldwide. And then finally on Friday, as you know, the pandemic is having an effect, just like with Esteban here, on having to curtail his promotional activities. Well, in Baja California, in Valle de Guadalupe, an emerging, I mean, well-known wine region has had to scale down a lot of its activities as well, but that doesn't keep the entrepreneurs, the vintners from reaching out. So we're having Pedro Poncelis Jr., who's been at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes various times with his fine wine, along with our good friend Gil Gutierrez, who will be talking about Baja's new reality. And if you go on our website, lapca.org, and our Facebook page, you'll be able to purchase wines ahead of time because we're going to have a little virtual tasting as well. And then finally, next Monday at En Casa con La Plaza Cocina, we're going to, the people from Papa Pancho's will be demonstrating their Baja style beer battered fish tacos. So that's it for this week. That's it for this session. Thank you so much, Esteban. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you again for having me.
All right, if you didn't catch this, the entirety of this session, it will be on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, on our Facebook page. It stays on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, and also on our website, lapca.org. Muchas gracias, Jimena. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye, Esteban.
Bye.